Greetings everyone, my name is Elliot and my business is graphic art. This video will introduce you to Printmaker, which is an extension of Photoshop Creative Cloud. Printmaker is for artists who want to create printed images, illustrations, murals, wallpapers, decorative designs, logos, etc. But you say everyone knows that Photoshop is used by artists, so what does Printmaker add to Photoshop? And here's the answer. Printmaker provides the artist with a customized set of tools for use in Photoshop. These tools don't pretend to emulate or simulate brushes. Instead, these Printmaker tools allow the artist to create images that resemble engravings and lithographs, including color lithographs, by shifting Photoshop's orientation away from brushes and painting. Printmaker offers the artist a simpler and more intuitive interface and a new path of creative freedom. To clarify these claims, I ask you to sit back and enjoy a brief slideshow of Printmaker images. This looks like an old-time engraving, but in fact it's a faux engraving made with Printmaker. Zooming in to show texture. Another example of the engraved look. The engraved look is based on uniformly spaced lines. This portrait, by contrast, has a lithographic quality. Now enlarged to show texture, which is key to understanding Printmaker. Again, this is an example of what I call the lithographic style. This image suggests a chromolithograph, a color lithograph. It was published as a newspaper illustration. Once again, texture is a key element. Consumer product package made with Printmaker. Magazine illustration about 8 inches wide in the print version. This is an engraved greeting card, printed with 5 colors: red, green, yellow, gray, and black. Each color requires its own plate, but the image can also be printed digitally. Cartoon published in a literary magazine. This is the cover of a book, enlarged. Another book cover. This is a print resembling a painting made with Printmaker. The image was printed digitally on canvas and varnished. And the print looks very much like an oil painting. Designed for a handbag. Many decorative possibilities are available from preset patterns in Printmaker. This portrait combines elements of both the engraved look and the lithographic look. Abstract design in CMYK colors. Architectural rendering. Textures, again, a big part of the image thanks to Printmaker. A large digital print. Zoomed in, it looks like a lithograph. And there it is over the mantel. This is a faux wood engraving designed by Gustave Doré. This is a large magazine illustration made very quickly and economically with Printmaker. And this is the last of the samples. The images we've seen are very different from each other, but they have one thing in common. They're composed of distinct contrasting colors. In many instances, the colors are simply black and white. This one is made up of 3 colors: black, cyan, and magenta. All the images can be printed by traditional methods, such as letterpress or lithography, where printing plates are inked with individual colors. What you don't see here are the smoothly blended tones of oil painting and photography. Most digital art has those blended tones, but Printmaker allows the artist to choose a different path, the path of traditional painting and printmaking. Now that we have some idea of what Printmaker images are, let's find out how they're made. The artist who works in Printmaker has the choice of two printmaking styles shown above. The image on the left is composed of preset patterns. We'll call that the lithographic style. On the right, the image is composed of uniformly spaced lines. That is the engraved style. Let's begin with the lithographic style. Images in the lithographic mode are composed of preset patterns which are painted onto a Photoshop canvas with tools that we access from the Printmaker interface. And here is that interface. When you click on the names on the list on the right, panels will appear. Each of these panels gives you access to tools that allow you to paint with unique patterns on your Photoshop canvas. The final two panels are not about patterns. They relate to the engraving style that we'll come to at the end of this video. Here's a collection of Printmaker patterns from all the different sets mixed together. Altogether, Printmaker contains more than 1,400 patterns, each of which can be cross-hatched and manipulated with Photoshop's transform tools. Some of these patterns are very useful for rendering foliage, some are good for skies, some for cloth, and so on. We can also do cross-hatching, as we'll see in the next slide. Here's a canvas filled with one of the preset patterns, and there's the cross-hatching, and cross-hatched in white. So any of the 1,400 preset patterns can be cross-hatched with another pattern in this way. Now here's a sample that demonstrates how an image is composed with patterns. You can see the image is made up of contrasting patterns. Later on, we'll show how to paint without patterns using techniques of engraving. Now, up to this point, we've been talking about black and white images and black and white patterns. Now let's consider color images in Printmaker and how to make them. Printmaker's preset patterns are always binary. By default, they are black and white, as shown on the left. When we create a color image, we work with the same binary patterns, but their colors are no longer black and white, as shown on the right. How then do we escape from the default black and white and specify the binary colors that we want? One way is to develop the image in black and white patterns and then colorize it. Another way is shown on the next slide. This image was painted directly with color patterns. How was this done? We started by painting dark solid colors on a Photoshop layer. Then colored patterns were painted over these dark colors. First, an intense red pattern of dots is painted over the dark red underpainting. The pattern allows the underpainting to show through, so the binary character of the image is maintained. Then yellow patterns are painted over the dark yellow. The patterns are more dense where the light is stronger. And then we paint the clouds. And last, light blue is painted over the dark blue of the sky, which gives a pleasing effect. The painting is finished. How did we paint with the colored patterns, you may ask? Well, first we go to Photoshop's Channels palette. We go to the Channels palette and we create new spot color channels, one channel for each of the 4 colors that we need. I've already created these spot channels using commands from the palette. I select the yellow spot channel, then I go to Printmaker, get a pattern brush, and begin painting in color, using denser patterns to get a lighter effect. After working on the yellow ball, I go to the blue sky, the red bricks, and the white clouds. So that's how you paint with Printmaker tools. Before leaving the subject of color, let's look at this chromolithograph. It's a label that was pasted on a cigar box over a century ago. The original print was made on 6 or 7 lithographic plates, but it could be made much more easily today in Printmaker using the technique we just demonstrated. Now, having gone into the world of color briefly, let's go back to the world of black and white. Up to this point, we've discussed the lithographic style where images are composed with preset patterns. The image above, created in Printmaker, illustrates the alternative approach, which we call the engraved style. There are no patterns here, only lines. The image is composed of lines that twist and turn, change density, and define form in a pleasing way. Here's another sample created in Printmaker, a magazine illustration. Another sample, a magazine illustration. It took about 1 hour to add shading to the outlines in this image. Traditionally, engraved images were created by artisans who cut fine grooves into wood or metal plates, as we see here in a wood engraving from around 1900. This is meant to be a caricature, but it shows pretty clearly the complexity of the engraving process. Engraving was a beautiful craft that evolved over 400 years until it was displaced by photography and photographic techniques. As wood engraving became rare, artists attempted to use pen and ink to imitate the old-style engraving. But pen and ink doesn't work very well in that context because the handheld pen doesn't permit the degree of control that was possible in the older system. So artists tried to make a virtue of this defect by using very loose and disorderly pen strokes, as you see here. This history may seem irrelevant, since nowadays our images are photographs, and they're most often presented on digital displays. But printed words and artists' images are still with us, and thanks to Photoshop and Printmaker, the art of engraving may continue to evolve even in the digital age. With that said as a preface, let's consider how we might return to the art of engraving using Printmaker. To do engraving, you need to draw uniformly spaced lines over the area that requires shading. Here's how we get those lines in Printmaker. First, you draw a single line, any line with a Photoshop pencil. Then, using Printmaker actions, the line is doubled, tripled, or repeated as many times as needed. In that way, we can rapidly fill a large or small shape with uniformly spaced lines. Having done that, we need to add light or dark to the field of lines. The last of the Printmaker panels gives us the controls for doing that. Here's a demonstration. I add black pixels and then more black pixels. Then I add white pixels and then more white pixels. Using controls on the panel, I can go from very dark to very light. This print was produced in the way just shown. Each of the engraved sections was drawn under masks that preserve the outlines of forms. Now, to conclude, this video has been a brief overview of the Printmaker extension of Photoshop Creative Cloud. My hope is that some viewers will want to try Printmaker on their own, and for a time, I'll make it freely available. I'll make it freely available to anyone who asks for it. I have not made tutorial videos. However, Printmaker has a very intuitive interface and should not present difficulties to anyone with a basic familiarity with Photoshop. Printmaker runs only on the latest versions of Photoshop Creative Cloud in both Windows and iOS platforms. The samples shown in this video were made on a Wacom tablet. And so, as I said, if you, the viewer, would like to experiment with Printmaker, I will send the install files to you at no charge. Please write to me at the above address. And many thanks for watching.